Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. So I'm going to be talking about cybersecurity leadership because you can have all the best cybersecurity tools, processes in place, but unless you have a really effective team in place, it's nowhere, you're nowhere. And cybersecurity, more than anything, is a team sport. The CISO from Airbus talked about it earlier, of the fact that you have to work with so many different teams, from legal to HR, to the IT teams, to the manufacturing teams, the engineering teams. And so to bring that together and have this really effective cybersecurity capability, leadership's absolutely critical. So is good cyber leadership not just the same as any good leadership? Well, I would argue not quite. And the reason it's not quite is because cybersecurity is in quite a different place to some of the other well-established disciplines. So if we compare for a second to finance, okay, can you imagine an executive committee member or a board member of a company saying, yeah, I don't really understand this profit and loss thing. I'm not sure I really get that balance sheet. I'm not quite sure how my order book relates to my share price. That would never happen. But it is not unusual on our boards today for the members to say, yeah, I need educating on cybersecurity. I don't fully understand it. I don't fully understand the digital space and that language. So that makes it a very different place, especially for a CISO's point of view, when you are talking to the board and the executive committee, knowing that they do not understand your world and language. That's exacerbated because of the skills shortage. So quite a lot of cyber security professionals are pushed very rapidly towards those senior positions where they are having to brief people at very senior levels. So you've got this technical expert who talks amongst their peers very comfortably, suddenly having to present to a leadership community who have not got that digital fluency that you would have in other areas such as finance. The other interesting comparison to make is reporting. So if you think about financial reporting, it's very regulated what companies have to report and how they report it. And you move between a company and look at the different financial reporting and it'll be very familiar. That is not true in cybersecurity at all. We haven't nailed the reporting as a community. It's still quite immature, very variable, very difficult to show what's sort of down in the weeds going on and bring that up to company risk, high-level place. The other interesting piece is cyber moral code. So I talk quite a bit about responsible democratic cyber power. So how does a nation as a whole build its competitiveness in the world stage around digital, and how does it do that responsibly in the space of cyber? Now, leadership very much feeds into that, because that kind of moral code of what's the right and wrong thing to do in cybersecurity is not agreed across the world as a whole. It varies between nations quite a bit. And so that not having a moral code well established also means, as a cyber leader, you've got to be very overt about what you want in that space and what you're doing in that space, and working, again, with the leadership of the company to set that out. And then you've got these factors of very high stress levels being reported in cybersecurity professionals, and that's a massive retention issue for us. So how you manage and lead teams who feel like they're always on. It's 24/7. I don't know when an attack's going to come in. Something huge could happen tomorrow that could mean all of my plans are put aside and I'm dealing with an incident. You've got to teach teams and guide teams through that mentally so that they can keep going and they've got the personal resilience to operate in that environment. And the last thing is, because the board isn't necessarily got that digital fluency, and because reporting is very immature, it's really easy to hide what's going on. It's really easy not to report the full picture, or to what's called greenwash, say everything's okay here, nothing to see, and create that illusion. And that's really, really dangerous. If companies don't understand, organizations don't understand the cyber risk that they're facing, that's really, really dangerous. So there's quite a few factors in there which mean, as a cyber leader, you do have to dial up certain aspects of good leadership in order to deal with some of these challenges. So I'm going to kind of cover two different areas. I'm going to talk about how to create the environment to influence effectively. Influence is obviously an absolutely key thing for any leader, and how do you create that environment such that you can influence at scale across your organization? And then I'll talk about team and how to build and manage that team. So the first thing is really clear messages. So when I first came into this role nearly 3 years ago now, I was really surprised at some of the types of questions that quite senior people asked me, like, have you dealt with that single vulnerability over there? Or what's your firewall setting over here? Or what's the setting on our USB sticks? They are really important questions, but absolutely not for a CISO of a really big organization. They are down in the weeds things. So it's quite easy to get pulled really quickly into down in the weeds. If the executive committee and the board sees you pinging around between issue, playing whack-a-mole, they get really uncomfortable. They're not quite clear whether that's a big problem or that's a big problem or that's a big problem, because you're flicking between them all. So having that really compelling vision and clarity over what you're doing is really important. Of course, all the detail happens underneath, but you need to roll it up into themes. And so one of the first things we put together was this vision. And you look through it and you think, oh, some of that's blindingly obvious, right? So for us at BAE Systems, we're a big defense company, okay? So for us, it's not about being just compliant with cybersecurity regulations so that we can kind of spend as little as possible. For us, it's a differentiator, and it's a really critical feature within our products. If they're not cyber secure, then they can't operate in a battle space where cyber is a domain of warfare. So for us, one of the early statements we made was, we want to be world class. We don't want to just be good enough. We don't want to be just compliant. We want to be world class. And that was a really important, simple statement of intent. And not all companies would make that statement, and that's fine. But you've got to know what it is for your company. There's then a really, again, quite obvious statement. We are there to reduce risk, ultimately. And we will have lots of difficult debates about business capability and business risk versus cybersecurity risk and how to balance those two. But ultimately, we're there to try to reduce business risk. Trust is a really important thing, partly because of that reporting issue. If you can't build trust with your customers and with your management teams, again, you're nowhere. So overtly putting that as a statement of we need to build trust between our teams and between our exec was a really important piece. Agility was another one, because threats are moving so fast and technologies are moving so fast. If you haven't got agility, you just can't keep up, and you can't deliver an effective cyber capability through time. And then that last bit of embedding cyber into the DNA, so making it everybody's role. It's not just my role to do cybersecurity, it's everybody's, and they all play a different part. So we had that really simple vision. You can get teams behind that, you can get them excited by it, and then you do the work to show how their work plugs into those high-level headlines, if you like. So on the left-hand side there, we've got the different work packages, if you like. Again, quite simple blocks, lots of detail underneath it, but teams need to know, big headlines, where are we heading? Once you've got that, a really important part is that governance. And governance really is quite simple. It's who does what and who decides what where. And if that isn't nailed, what you find is lots of different teams across the organization making slightly different decisions or questioning each other's decisions. Whereas if you establish that governance model and say, I'm going to bring these people together in this meeting every week, every month, every quarter, whatever it is, And you are clear on why it's those people, and it's those people because they've got the right expertise, the right visibility, the right knowledge. You bring them together, and when they make a decision, that lands, and that sticks. And it means that you, going back to that agility piece, you can really build that agility into as an organization and make decisions quickly. It also makes sure that you have visibility of risk, because you have the sort of detailed technical discussion meetings flowing up into a higher level meeting, flowing up into the board, and you're overt on how that works and how you get the reporting flowing through. So you get the right visibility of risk happening and the right decisions made at the right level. And then to support all of that, really clear policies to help guide people. There shouldn't be crutches for people. They shouldn't be blindly making decisions based on some instruction list, but there should be guidance so that you can operate in a similar, consistent way at scale across the organization. Going back to that reporting piece, quite a lot of reporting can be what I call a confetti cannon effect. So it's bright and shiny, everyone's grabbing at different pieces, there's absolutely shed loads of it, and nobody grabs the same piece. So you all have a slightly different picture. It's really painful, because back to that clarity and agility of decision making, if you've all got different bits of information, you can't reach a consensus rapidly. So spending time on good dashboards and making sure that they're shared right across the organization. So one business unit doesn't have some unique form of reporting that isn't flowing up to the center. What it also does is make your decisions data-driven and not opinion-driven. Opinions are quite painful when you're trying to make decisions rapidly. Much better to have a basis of data underneath it to say, this is where I'm driving at and this is why. It takes the emotion out of the discussion quite a lot of the time. And it also enables you to see where the problem areas are. It's fascinating. When we started building some of these, the number of times where business units would say, yeah, it's all fine here. We are so good at this thing. And then you go and look at their reporting and go, do you know, it's funny because this dashboard says that you're only 50% compliant with that. You sure it's all right? And then you start getting under the surface and having really good conversations about how it really is and being able to help each other. So avoid the confetti cannon. Then there's style. So when you've got all those meetings set up and you've got all your lovely data and your reporting, how you say the things that you say and how you get the right atmosphere in those meetings is really important. And I often think, if I look through my career, what at the very core of what I do is bridge between the technical and the business leadership. In other words, I am a translator. I take complicated technical ideas and understand how they relate in a business context to something. And that's really important. So when I'm talking to the board, I am often talking in analogies, I'm talking about business risks, and I can link back down to what we're doing at the technical level and explain it to them. When I'm with the teams across BAE, I'm turning on the inspiration bit and the energizing bit, because cybersecurity, I love it, right? But it is quite hard sometimes. It just goes on and on. It never stops. You never stop changing and improving and thinking about the next thing, and that's partly why I love it. But to do that, you really do have to keep the teams energized and inspired, and that's really important to get them excited. And with that comes creating a clear direction, right? Everybody needs that, whether it's the exec committee or the teams on the ground need that clear direction. So I quite like this quote from Ruth Ginsburg. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. So the minute you find yourself in a meeting where you're kind of saying the same thing again a little bit louder, thinking, why aren't they listening to me? It's probably because you haven't got that translation bit right. You're doing what they're doing in this Larson cartoon here of talking to the pet and thinking the pet can understand you. If If you haven't used the right language, they won't get it. It doesn't matter whether you say it 3 times, 10 times, louder or quieter, it won't land. So really thinking about how you spin it to what their world is, what their lens is. So really important part is building that team. Once you've got that framework sort of structure in place, how do you build the right team? We put together this people strategy as we were thinking that one of our main risks was not being able to hire the right people into the roles and being able to get the skills in. And we said that what success would be people were banging on our door to join the cybersecurity team in BAE because they'd heard how cool it was to work there. They'd heard that it made their careers take off, that they were never bored, that they were really excited, that it was a really friendly, inspirational place to work. So we put together this people strategy to look at how would we do that? How would we sell a brand of the cybersecurity team to entice people in and to retain them? Because that brand can't just be, I'm telling you a good story, it's got to be a reality on the ground. So the first thing was, do we know what we need, when we need it, and where we need it? What skills do we need, where in the organisation, and when do I need them? The next bit we did was thinking about that attraction bit. So sponsoring key events, community involvement, so doing a lot of work with schools and universities, diversity, equity and inclusion work, raising our profile externally on social media, doing a lot of mentoring and doing that across the cyber community as a whole, not just in BAE. And then recruiting people in, but recruiting people in different ways. So I took a decision early on not to recruit for skills, but to recruit for aptitude. So does that person have the right attitude, the right potential, the right values, the right underpinning values, such that they'll fit into the team and that I can teach them? Because I can teach them cybersecurity relatively easily. It's really hard to teach attitude and values, moral values. And that's worked really well. I've hired some people who've just been brilliant in the freshness they've brought to the team. Someone who took healthcare care homes through the COVID crisis. If you can deal with taking through a load of care homes for the elderly through the COVID crisis, you can deal with a cyber incident, because that was properly difficult and stressful for quite a long time. And she's just brought in incredibly energy and learnt the cybersecurity piece really quickly. The other really interesting thing about this work is that there's a kind of flywheel effect. So when my teams got involved with doing, if you like, cyber community work, there's a massive feel-good factor to it. You know you're doing a good thing, and you're doing something a bit different to day job. So it allows people to test in a safe place what they're doing. So as an example, we do a lot on gender diversity with my team. And when we do those conferences, I quite often get the females in my team to talk or lead a panel. Some of them have never done that in their lives before, but you're in a safe, smaller space so they can practice doing that. And then they can take that to their professional work. And that's created a real buzz in the team. They really enjoy it and they get the excitement with it. This one I learnt the hard way. Don't ever leave culture to chance. Don't leave it as an unsaid thing. Don't assume that other people have the same values that you do and think that that's the way the team will work. So in a previous organisation, a while ago now in my career, a new MD came in. The business area wasn't making enough money, so they brought in this MD, and she was going to turn it around. Now, her moral code was very different to my values, my moral code. And I watched what she was doing, and there was a lot of banging on tables, there was a lot of shouting, there was a lot of sort of leading by fear, huge hierarchy. And I watched that and thought, God, maybe that is what you need. Maybe I'm being too nice. Maybe that's what you need to drive a really effective organisation. And I started trying out some of those management techniques. Oh, I tell you now, the most stressful time in my career and the least effective time in my career. It's good to try to do it the wrong way for a bit. Good learning. it's really, really ineffective. You start losing staff left, right, and centre. They're terrified. And interestingly, in cybersecurity, it's really bad because people start not to raise issues. They start not to tell you about cyber incidents that have happened because they're too frightened of the consequences. So it's particularly bad in cybersecurity to have that management style. So now, when I work with teams, I'm very overt about it. I talk about the behaviours that we want, particularly courage, integrity, and collaboration. They're really important. Cybersecurity is a team sport, you need the collaboration. Integrity, because it's really easy to hide stuff in cybersecurity. You've got to have the courage to stand up and say, this is what it's like, and to challenge. And I show that picture there. That's my daughter when she was 2. She's 15 now, but that was at a very cute stage. I show that to talk about the fact that you need to get your hands dirty sometimes. So you need to get stuck in. It's not good enough to step back and leave other people to struggle. And it's also okay to make a bit of a mess sometimes. It's okay to make some mistakes and then learn from them and pull back from it. I also sometimes talk about it in terms of never throw mud around. Never do the mudslinging thing. Get stuck in and help people, but don't throw dirt at other teams and say, oh, it's their fault their network isn't secure. You've got to work together. So don't leave culture to chance. And really think about well-being. So we do quite a lot of work on the personality types that come into the team. I don't want everybody to be the same personality type. So I'm on that Inspirer, that yellow one, so I'm happy standing up on stage going, it's brilliant, it's going to be so good, this is the direction we're going in. But if everyone in my team was like that, it would be an absolute disaster. I need some people who really think about the detail, the observers, or some people who are supporters and really think about, how's everyone feeling in the team? Is everyone all right? Is that landing okay? So you need that mix within the team. And then we deliberately, with our team away days every quarter, spend some social time together. So that motley crew on the right there with the wigs on, that's all the CISOs across the BAE business units. We all got together and did an escape room, which was properly good fun. But you've got to get to know each other and get to trust each other at that personal level as well. So to conclude, I think in cybersecurity particularly, because of the level of maturity of it as an area compared to finance and some of the other areas, leadership really, really matters. It's not a soft and fluffy, oh, maybe we should do this together. It's very calculated, very deliberate. This is what we want to create as a team, and this is the culture, and these are the leadership traits we want. It's essential for strong cyber resilience. You can't be resilient as an organisation if your team itself isn't resilient who are delivering cybersecurity. So really strong governance, build those high-performing teams, think really carefully about how you attract people in and retain them, and then absolutely flawless behaviours, integrity, courage, and collaboration. Thank you.